Hey everyone, the purpose of this channel is to have difficult conversations in a more excellent way based off the Bible verse 1 Corinthians 12:31. So let's get into it. We go on our first date and now she gives me kind of like not an ultimatum, but an ultimatum. She's like, oh, if you don't pursue God, we can never be. And that's when I was like, oh, all those things I prayed for, all those things I fasted for, me going to church, like it's supposed to lead up to something like something. Hello everybody, welcome to a more excellent conversation. Today we are going to have a more excellent conversation about my testimony, about why I chose Christianity, how I became a Christian, kind of my story. I realized I never even shared this with you guys, so let's get into it. But before we dive directly in the video, if this channel encouraged you, inspired you in any way, please like, share, comment, subscribe. And I have a challenge for you. Comment what topic you want me to talk about and I'll make a video about it. So let's get into it. Some people can recite the day that they're saved, the time that they're saved, the hour, what they ate for lunch that day, but my experience was a bit different. It was more of a process for me. And I learned that one of my pastors broke down salvation to me, and he explained that it's definitely a process. Like there's where you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, but like God was calling you before you even got to that point to be able to make that decision, if that makes sense. So there was a long process for me coming back to Christ. I grew up in the church. I remember being young and going to my grandmother's Methodist church where my brother and my cousin were altar boys. But I really remember as I got older going to my mom's church, which was a Church of God. And I remember going to church service. We sat in the front. I would fall asleep during the preaching. I remember a lot of the songs for praise and worship. They did hymns, some contemporary. It was a smaller church at the time and eventually grew and grew as I, distanced myself from the church. I remember the church barbecues. I even remember going to a retreat with them in my teenage years. But the thing that stuck out the most to me was going to youth group. So youth group was really interesting. Like when I would be around the other youth, like they confused me about God completely. From my understanding and my background, from what my parents taught me, like God was supposed to be revered, your faith was supposed to be something you respected, but the way that they were talking about Christianity and talking about God, it just threw me out for a loop. So basically they would say like, well, they would curse or they would do something like kind of inappropriate and be like, well, at least I'm showing God the real me. And I can get a space for that. At the time, it just sounded super hypocritical. And I still would say that's super hypocritical because it's unrepentant sin. So, but that's me knowing it in hindsight. But back then, when I heard them talking like this, and it wasn't just like one or two people, it was kind of like the vibe of the whole group. And when I saw them talking like this, it confused me completely. It actually was the source of my church hurt. I thought like, oh, if this is how we're going to see God, we're not going to respect him. What's the point of going to church? What's the point of church? What's the point of God anyway? If this is how people are going to behave, I understood that there was you should be righteous in some way, even though I did not have the language for it. I understood it conceptually. So that ended up confusing me and kind of deterring me from just going to church in general. So I went to church. I want to say my mom was in that church for 20 plus years. So I probably was there from like anywhere, I would say from 7 to like 14. And the day that my mom stopped waking me up on the Sunday and gave me a choice to not go to church, that's the day I stopped going. I remember growing up though in my house, something we did do was pray. My dad taught me how to pray. We prayed before meals and during bedtime, but those were the only two times we prayed. And my dad never went to church with my mom and I. So that family dynamic also confused me a bit because I saw people in the church, some of their families would come together as a whole. My mom would tell me that my dad went to church every day when he was little because his father was a pastor. So now he just was tired of church in general. So I kind of understood that, kind of respected it and went along with it. But he still taught me some biblical disciplines, even though he didn't necessarily fully walk out his faith. So now I stopped going to church. I have this seed of doubt about whether I should even follow God. What's the right way to follow God? What's the path? What do all these things mean? And now I'm saying, as I'm getting older, I'm saying things like, "Oh, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. I talk to God every day," or like things of that nature. Not necessarily planting a flag in Christianity, planting a flag anywhere. It's just ambiguous. And in high school, I was often like, they called me grandpa because I had like at least some type of moral standards, but I was still sexually immoral in high school. I was still cursing, lying, spitting. But when it came to like drinking and smoking, I was like, no, I'm not doing that stuff. That's not for me. I didn't like peer pressure. I didn't like people forcing me to try to do things. That was very annoying to me because everybody would just do them. Like that didn't make sense to me at the time. And then as I progressed to college, I started distancing myself even more from God. I was starting partying a lot. I went to a lot of parties, like 2-3 every month. And it came to a point where I was a party starter. I love to dance. So I would be in the middle of the circle doing a bunch of dances. I learned how to dance Afrobeats. I learned how to dance bachata, merengue, salsa. I learned how to dance wine, all those things. From every culture, I learned every dance. So when I went to the party, I was very prepared and I could, enjoy myself as much as possible. And eventually I got to a point where one of my friends noticed, like, yo, he starts the party, and me and another friend of mine, we were became like hosts, right? So we would put our flyers our faces on a flyer, and then send the flyer to people, have people come out to one location, and we will host a party. So we started doing that for free for a few parties, but eventually we started getting paid just $50 a party just to host it and spread the word. And so that was starting to take off. But then COVID happened, and COVID kind of deterred me from that partying life. But during this college period, I had a friend at a job that I worked at in a school, and she was going to this church. However, she was still partying and she was still going out, but she would always invite me to church. She would always talk about God, always try to pick my brain. And I told her straight up, like, I wasn't necessarily talking to her, but I said, it confuses me when people say XYZ about God and that they love God and that they should go to church, but then they're living the same lifestyle that I'm living, not going to church, partying, being sexually immoral. Like, we're doing the same thing. So once I said that to her, something clicked. But knowing what I was basically describing was lukewarm Christianity, being neither hot nor cold. And that's where I was all my life until a few years ago. So I'm like, I'm saying to her in different words, you're a lukewarm Christian just like I'm a lukewarm Christian. What's the difference? I don't see what the difference is. Like, you're doing the exact same thing as I am. So then all of a sudden, right before COVID shuts down the world, she stops going out. But my other friend who went to the same church as her, he kept going out. But when she stopped going out and continued to invite me to church, it took about 3 years. I believe it was from 2016 to 2019, 2020. And she invited me for 3 years straight. And once she did that change at the end of the 3 years is when I was like, wow, what made her stop? Because it's stemming, that whole situation with her is reminding me of youth group, how they were lukewarm, hot nor cold. So, but when she did something different, that piqued my interest. That made me want to, dive in and see, what's the difference? Something changed. There was actual transformation. My pastor just preached a message last Sunday saying that people won't claim Jesus without the transformation. And that's kind of how most Christians I encountered were all lukewarm. But when I saw her do something radical, it inspired me. And I actually went to her church for the first time. I sat in the back. I went to a concert first before I went to actual service. And then eventually I started going to church on Sundays by myself, to a different church than my mom, but I started going by myself. And I'm still in this process where I'm like, I'm still lukewarm. I'm going to church, but I'm still committing sexual sin. I'm going to church, but I'm still not changing. But God's doing something. He was pulling me towards himself. Finally, my best friend's cousin, who I had a crush on since I was 14 years old, me, her, my best friend and his girlfriend go on a trip to Florida, the Keys. And we hijacked my best friend's cousin's trip. We hijacked her trip. She was going to go by herself, spend time with the Lord, because she was also a Christian who took her faith seriously. And so that whole time we're, enjoying ourselves, going to the beach, my best friend and his girlfriend go on a date. So it's just me and his cousin. And I'm like, oh, we should just go get something to eat. It's not a date. It could be a friendship date. And she's like, no. At the time, I always liked her. She always knew that I liked her. I'll be more faithful, X, Y, and Z. But on this trip, God transformed us both, and we ended up becoming friends. So the whole time, it was more like an acquaintanceship. We both knew each other. My best friend was kind of like the glue to our whatever relationship we had. But during that trip, I got sick. I took care of her. She got to see me for who I really was and how God had created me to be. Like, not just this kid that likes her, but somebody who has more depth. So she actually starts liking me. And when she likes me, I'm like, no, like, you denied me for X amount of years. Like, that's tough for you. It sucks for you. Eventually, God continued to work on my heart. And we ended up having a mutual liking. Like, we liked each other mutual. But she was the first woman to deny me, not just emotionally, but sexually. She's like, no, we can't do this because, it's not pleasing to the Lord. She was very serious about her walk at the time. And it's not like we were perfect, but still, that was the second time I experienced a Christian who stood 10 toes down for God, that didn't compromise with the way that they lived just to please their own desires, but wanted to do the desires of the Lord. So that was very interesting. And then we go on our first date, and now she gives me kind of like not an ultimatum, but an ultimatum. She's like, oh, if you don't pursue God, we can never be. And that's when I was like, oh, all those things I prayed for, all those things I fasted for, me going to church, like, it's supposed to lead up to something, like something's supposed to happen. So eventually I get back to New York. She lived in Massachusetts. So we're split, but now I'm going to church with intention. There's an altar call. I go to the altar call. I get a Bible. My mom had given me a Bible when I was younger, but I never read it. But I get this Bible. I start reading it from Genesis to Revelation, right, throughout the years. And I finally give my full life, my full efforts to God and pursuing him with all my heart, because she told me, like, if I don't do this, there's no way it could be. Knowing that in order for me to be a husband for her, I needed to be in right standings with God and pursuing him every day. And now fast forward, we're married, about to have our first child, so like from me being church hurt all the way to this beautiful process of me becoming a practicing Christian is what I call it. It was a long process. It wasn't something that happened overnight. And during those years, I also questioned God. I always tell people, before I accepted Christianity, I was a skeptic, right? But God, that whole time, God pulled me towards him, right? So I just wanted to encourage you guys with my testimony. I was a skeptic. So while I was reading the Bible, I had so many questions, and I didn't know where to ask them. But my church has such a rich community where they had a men's group, they had youth group, they had all these groups that I would go to. So I would just go to church and ask these questions, and they answered them. So that was the first time I went to church with questions that people answered. And then they gave me resources on, like, Got Questions, the app, or .com, .org, and tools to do Bible studies and how to Bible study, how to pray. They had these classes that taught me all these things. And as I was searching, that whole lukewarm season, I was searching for God, and I felt like I finally found him. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, subscribe, comment what you want to see. If you made it this far in the video, just leave a comment like, oh, I finished, or I made it, so I could shout you out, give you a thumbs up. I appreciate your time, and I'll let you guys get to